Hi, everyone. Good to have you back. Andrea, good to see you. It's been a couple weeks. Kendra, I wasn't sure you still existed. This is good to see.
It's good to see you guys too.
It's really an honor to have Captain Seth Keshel on with us
Yes.
again. Welcome, Seth. We were trying to decide how to introduce you, and we're like, if you don't know who Seth Keshel is, I'm sorry, you need to pull yourself out from underneath the rock.
That's right.
He is the election integrity guru, Afghanistan veteran, Army intelligence captain, and just overall badass. So it's an honor to have you on with us.
Well, thank you, ladies. It's great to be on. Great to spend the end of our morning out here in Arizona with you guys.
You guys, it is tax day. Are you aware? In the country that does not have double taxation, make sure you pay the cartel because they will take your stuff if you don't. I'm sorry that we're like that. We're trying to fix all the things, but unfortunately, today is tax day, and so we have to
Why'd you have
give
to
our
start that
penance.
way?
I have to say that I get mad every year when I do my taxes, and I can't let it go without it being said that it's just wrong on so many levels, and it's illegal on so many ways. But it is the cartel, and you have to pay, and you don't have a choice, so you better do it.
And now I need a drink.
Yes. On that
Well,
note,
it's even worse off when you pay it all in one chunk like I do every year. So, it all makes up the same number, but it just hurts a little worse that one day.
It's that's just part of it, right? That doesn't even count all the different taxes you paid on the quadruple times you were taxed on the same thing all through the year, all the different ways. It's Trump did give us some cuts. It was a little bit, we felt it a little bit this year. The tax cuts were a little bit better, but overall, it's just wrong. It's not fixed, even close.
So thank you all for working hard and paying the man.
And the corrupt government that we're trying to clean up. Speaking of cleaning up, Seth, 2020 election rolls. You are the one that really broke it down for the entire country. What do you see are the biggest vulnerabilities right now as we're heading into 2026?
Well, I mean, as far as elections go, you can see it with how tightly they guard certain sacred cows within elections, because you have a lot of cases that are going before the Supreme Court either now or in the future when certain courts canceled Trump executive orders, mail-in balloting. So Andrea's right there in Nevada. She knows all about this because Nevada has legalized automatic voter registration, universal vote by mail, and ballot harvesting. And when you have 7 out of 8 votes coming from 2 counties, Clark and Washoe counties, it's very easy to overwhelm the geographic space of Nevada, which is overwhelmingly not just red, but an arterial crimson. And that's far too easy to do. And it's only now beginning to erode because the Republicans are starting to make gains in voter registration in the urban counties because of the Latino working class changing sides. So any states where you have closely decided races that are dominated by mail-in ballots and their late counting ballots, which there's a case in front of the Supreme Court right now, then you would definitely slide your scale to favor the Democrats to hold that seat, especially in a 2026 midterm. So I've taken a lot of heat for how I've approached the 26 midterm cycle. History tells us really everything we need to know. It is very hard for the president's party to gain seats. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't happen. 3 times in the House since 1934, the president's party has gained seats. So 87% of the time, the president's party loses seats in the House. The good news about the House is the gerrymandering in red and blue states has made it to where neither party has a high ceiling or a low floor. So if the Dems win the House, which I would consider likely, that they will not have a very large majority. So now the thing about Democrats is they'll vote lockstep with one another, and they will definitely try to impeach President Trump many times. The good news is that's going to go nowhere. The economy should improve. And I think by 2028, people are going to have their fill of Democrats. And by the time the 2030 reapportionment hits, their party's really going to be screwed. They're going to probably lose at least 15 electoral votes and representatives based on the population shifts and the proper counting of the census. And the Senate, though, of course, is a different animal. Andrew mentioned before we got on that Tom Renz brought up some of my analysis on Tim Pool's show the other day. I would consider it very likely for the GOP to hold the Senate because the map is absolutely horrific for the Democrats. Very tough for them to win. They can win all 4 of the key races. People are watching the Senate and still be down 51-49. So people need to take a Prozac, back away from X, and get away from the algorithms to properly see the playing field. And even when my forecasts appear to be somewhat pessimistic or negative, they're not. They're cooked in reality that should allow us to properly assign funds, resources, time, and energy towards the seats that can actually be won. So if there's a pathway to keeping majority in the Republican House, I've found it. It just has to be executed.
So what is that pathway?
39 seats. We have 435 House seats, and I consider 396 of them to be safe red or safe blue in this cycle. So the Dems definitely have a bit of a tailwind behind them because of what history tells us about midterms. But just yesterday, you know, if you want to be a little more confused, the Republican Party won 3 mayor's races in overwhelmingly Hispanic jurisdictions, one of them being Rio Rancho, New Mexico, then a couple down in Florida. So it does appear that if you're gonna ever look at any polls, some of those crosstabs do hold some interesting nuggets, and they have consistently held that the Latino approval of Trump is over 50%, which is absolutely incredible because it's all the white conservatives that are sitting online complaining every day about everything they can find. So. But polls are polls. Midterms have their own dynamics. Long-term political future of the Republican Party looks pretty good, and if they can deliver on 25% of their agenda items, then they're going to be a pretty tough nut to crack in the time going forward because you could only hold the demographic advantage like the Democrats did for so long, especially if you control immigration. But for the House, 39 seats. Some of them are Republican defenses, like 4 seats in Pennsylvania. In other states, you've got Republicans on offense, like Ohio or Texas or even Florida. So we have to see it like it is. What that means is to control our appetites, not go after certain fool's gold or white whale seats that the Republicans are always wanting to win. And the best case scenario is Republicans hold the House with like 220 seats. That's the best case scenario.
What's the probability of that?
25%. And I would say if, there's a good chance. I just crunched all the numbers today. I think there's a really good chance that the Virginia referendum redistrict fails. Now that's based on turnout differentials. You know, the Democrats had the D+4 turnout edge in the 2024 midterms, and the seats went about the same, D+3.6. So right now the Republicans have an edge in turnout by district of almost 5 points, and the Republicans also come to turn out on election day much more. So I think that there's a good chance that the referendum to put Virginia as a 10-1 redistricted state is going to fail. But if it's close, that brings up a much different set of circumstances. So if Virginia fails, then the Republicans have a 25% chance to hold the House majority. If Virginia passes their referendum, I really don't see how the GOP's got a path.
But you say, regardless, you think by 2030 we've got a clear shot of holding the House, the Senate, and the presidency.
Yes, the way the population is moving domestically, the blue states are going to continue to bleed representation because the Electoral College is simply a count of how many senators each state has. So we get 2, and then how many reps there are. So when the population numbers change, other states get new reps and they come off of a state that lost a rep. In the 2020 census, the government admitted it botched its own count, and it overcounted blue states and undercounted red states almost uniformly. Right. So even so, the Republicans still picked up 3 electoral votes and 3 House seats. It should have been 12 to 16 more by my analysis. So if Trump gets the census right, and there's enough illegals gone where they don't get counted in the number of whole persons, and then you have more people moving, then you have the potential for a seismic shift in the Electoral College and in the U.S. House. Maybe 20 seats. It could be substantial. And if you could pick up 15 to 20 new electoral votes for the Republican Party, it completely negates Georgia, which Georgia is the one state I look at. I don't like how it looks in the next 12 years.
You think it's turning blue?
Yes. I think that it's turning blue and blue. Okay. So we'll put the quotations on that. There is and since this is a good thing that you are immersed in Republican Party politics, this is one thing that all the black pillars online don't seem to understand. There's 2 ways to fix our country. One of them is violence. Okay. And I don't think any patriot or Christian should advocate for that being the means of reforming our country. Now, we always have the Second Amendment we talk about for defense, and you can look at any of these urban centers in this country and realize that there's a need to defend oneself. But absent a willingness to overthrow the government, which, by the way, anybody watching this, that's not what I'm calling for, then the means of fixing our country is the political process. And the reality is we have a 2-party system. Nobody has run a successful minor party in many, many years. In fact, Ross Perot had the most memorable minor party presidential run. He only got 19% of the vote. So These minor parties don't have the ability to run for county commissioner. They don't run for state legislature. So I'm not really sure why people are like, well, I'm a libertarian. It always comes down to the two parties. So that means we have to fix the Republican Party to be able to meet most of their campaign promises. But it's not all Trump's fault. This is the thing that I get frustrated about watching the internet is we did elect a Trump. And there's a number of things in this term that he has done extremely well that people overlook because he did so much in the first 6 weeks. But I think that we don't have very many Trumps in the House or in the Senate or in the state legislatures or speakers of the House of the various legislatures. So we can look in the mirror. Less than half of precinct committee man spots in my county and in Maricopa County are filled. So how can we truly say that people are knocking doors, putting out signs, donating to campaigns if we don't even have the minimum political involvement? But Georgia is the same problem. The rural counties are maxed out. You're not going to get better than these 85 to 15 margins in these rural white counties. And then you have where the population center is growing and changing is Metro Atlanta. And if you look at the map of the little arrows the New York Times likes to put out, all the blue was on Metro Atlanta, everything moving left. The only reason Trump won Georgia is because he got too big to rig up in the north parts and the rural portions of the state. And even so, many of the formerly red and purple counties of interior Atlanta went much further to the left. So, absent the ability to reverse course in Atlanta and do 10% better in the major counties, Georgia is going to be 4 to 7 points blue coming in the next 12 years.
Well, even in Oklahoma, you talked about we needed to get people involved. Every revolution, as you know, was fought with maybe 3%. So we need more than that if we're going to go with all of the precinct leaders, right? We do push that in Oklahoma. We're like, we need you guys to fill your precincts. We need to get the leaders, and we probably have more than most. There's still a good percentage of precincts that don't have a chairman at them. What do we do about the apathy? Is there something we can do to get people? They don't seem to care unless it's at their doorstep, threatening them personally.
Well, you just said it. People are generally passive. My dad had a quote that he used to say, and he probably was a little generous towards the people not doing anything. But he said 90% of the people are just along for the ride. 10% of the people lead the way. I think it's probably more like 99 to 1. But that's a good way of putting one of my dad's quotes to life. And in a state like Oklahoma, which Trump won by 36 points. All right, then I came from Mississippi, is where I grew up, and I just did 2 events there this weekend. Small crowds. Trump plus 21. So these safe red states have a way of putting people to sleep, or even if they're run by weak Republicans, they're still Republican. The average person isn't that political to know that, hey, these are weak Republicans. We're a red state. Because, zooming off of the ground a little bit, it's a much simpler political world. So getting people involved when you have a safe red state. The same thing is true on the reverse. It's very hard to get Republicans involved in states like Massachusetts because it's a deep blue state where it seems so hopeless. So unless people have a vested interest in caring about their county commissioners and their school boards in states like that, you're going to have the expected returns of people being only marginally involved. So leadership is a real challenge.
Yeah, no, that's accurate. I do think we're seeing more of it here, but we constantly engage them. And so we have chats, we're constantly engaging and putting stuff out. We just rolled out OK GOP certified, which gives a very base level of the candidates, but they have to they can't have registered as anything but a Republican for 5 years, can't have given to a Democrat, had to agree with most of the platform, be strong on abortion, and be strong on your gun rights, right? In Oklahoma, I carry a gun in my purse. I don't have a permission slip. I have the Second Amendment. That's all I need. And so stuff like that. And so we're slapping that on candidates. And so maybe if more parties did stuff like that, maybe just maybe it gets people more engaged. We're just trying to show who is who. I would like to have made it a much bigger deal and add more criteria to that. But I don't think the average voter cares about much more than that. So we had to keep it to very basic to what they care about so that it would have value, right?
Well, look, Trump won every county in Oklahoma 3 times. No Democrat has even won a single county in Oklahoma since Bush was for president, right? And Oklahoma has some old Democrat roots, and those have all changed over. Now there's competition now in Oklahoma County. All right, so if the Dems wind up getting a bit of a foothold in there, which is possible, then you could have them put in some policies that really piss the local moderates off and turn them into more conservative Republicans. So absent a real threat to the lifeblood of Oklahoma, which would be, of course, energy, or some crazy stuff going place into the schools that people begin to think that this is no longer an Oklahoma thing, then you're going to have a difficult time motivating people to care. And that's a good problem to have in some ways, because in some states it's like a Flight 93 situation, where if we don't get this thing turned off. Virginia is a great example. Virginia and Colorado are great examples to the rest of America of what a middle of the road, marginally conservative state can get turned into when it's taken over by radicals. The geographic space of Colorado, I'd say 95% of geographic Colorado is red. And then you have this bubble in Denver. This is hard to the left. Then the Republicans don't even bother to compete in these spaces. That's another part that I get really frustrated about. Pennsylvania could be easily Republican if the GOP would invest a lot of resources in Philadelphia County. And instead of losing it 85-15, lose it 75-25. You'll never lose Pennsylvania again. So this is the same thing going on in Atlanta. It's the same thing in Virginia, where they're trying to take a moderate state that voted for Harris by 5.8% and turn it into a 10-1 Democrat map. It would be the most extreme gerrymander in the country.
That's fascinating.
And this is the work that I've been doing with the Check My Vote people is so important. I mean, like caring about your voter registration, your address, checking your address. You can go to checkmyvote.org to see all that. But cleaning up the voter rolls, like what you're talking about is, if people don't care about what's happening, even like you say in their county, at their county commissioners and at their school boards, but at your own address, pay attention to what's happening to the voter rolls in your state. It's very important.
Well, we know that we need same-day voting and we need paper ballots. Mm-hmm. What is the reality of actually getting that implemented?
Well, so Trump is busy pushing executive orders. The United States Senate has completely failed, and this goes back to the chicken and the egg. I've been talking about how elections are corrupt for 6 years. And we think about the presidential race because that's what animated so many people to care. But down ballot from Trump in 2020 and 2024, and also in the midterms in 2022, I count 9 Senate seats that would have gone to the Republican candidate under a standard set of rules that we played under before the 2020 election. So what has happened with our elections is not so much a light switch getting thrown and elections getting stolen. Okay, it's been the steady progression of bad election laws that yield a certain ballot count. Kind of like baseball players in the 90s, where you could look at stats for 30 years before the 90s and you could see the guy that led the league in home runs would have 40 some of the home runs. And maybe you have one good year where the guy's got 50. But all of a sudden now everybody in the 90s, everybody's hitting 40 home runs. Several people are hitting 50 and people are now hitting 60, 70 home runs. So something has changed, and what it turned out to be was performance enhancing drugs, allowing the muscles to recover faster and sustain themselves over a 162 game season, and therefore over time produce more output. So changing the law has allowed for a bigger shovel to collect ballots passively. These ballots are being collected in the mail, and the early voting period is definitely what's used to scoop all that stuff up. So in Las Vegas, you can just go into all the projects and apartments and university dwelling areas and pick up the ballots of these people who otherwise wouldn't vote. It's a passive way of turning in ballots rather than active citizen engagement. So Trump has tried to stamp some of this out because the Senate failed to act. And then you have what's going to certainly happen is the left wingers are going to shop for courts and they're going to make sure they get the ruling they want. But I actually think Trump is ahead of that, realizes that will happen. And knowing the Supreme Court's attitude towards the way elections are so rigged these days, I think he's rolling the dice on relief coming out of the Supreme Court. Because it does look like they're going to rule against Watson, the Secretary of State of Mississippi, on the late arriving mail-in ballots case, and that would be a national injunction. So there goes California's ability to count votes until December and flip House seats like they did in 2024.
Wow. That's impressive. Do you look at every single, like, how do you do that? When I'm like talking about Oklahoma and you're like, well, yeah, they did this in Oklahoma City, and how many municipalities do you keep an eye on?
Everything.
All of them.
Look, there's 3,143 counties and independent cities in the United States. There's really only about 6 or 8 different precinct types based on the way I categorize things. So my model is to put things into buckets that are similar. So instead of having 3,143 different sets of stuff I keep up with, I pair things together and I put them in buckets. So Virginia and Colorado are always some sort of a comp to me. Nevada and Arizona are another comp for me. Michigan, Florida, and Pennsylvania are another one. Duval County, Florida, and the state of Georgia are a comp for me. So one interesting story about me, I think I might have even put it in the book, is during one of my periods of unemployment, I was laid off from a healthcare job I got where they had a merger that went completely sideways. I would have laid myself off too. I spent some time rather than rushing out to get the first job I could get. I was about to finish my MBA and I wanted to find a job commensurate with my salary expectations, my education, and my professional experience. And I had an interview with a consulting gig. I wound up not getting the job, but it was a think tank and it wasn't one of the big ones like McKinsey. It was a small Houston based business think tank. And they had me take a proprietary test. Math, grammar, writing, and here are your scores. Scores were good here, average here, above average there. And there was one category, one test that I did really well on. They said it was off the charts. I sound like Trump right now. They said it was off the charts. We've never seen anything like it, believe me. So it was a categorization test where it was their own thing they made up. And they give you 50 vocabulary words and they tell you to create 4 buckets and you can name them whatever you want and put all 50 of those words into one of these 4 buckets to see how well you can group things together. They said it was off the charts. So I do the same thing with the way I analyze precincts. It all depends on the trend. What is going to be depends on the trend. And this is why people get this sinking feeling about Texas, because they may not know it, but they look at trends like, hey, George Bush used to win this state by 20 and now it's 10. Or they look at Austin, which used to be one of these artsy fartsy eclectic 60-40, 58-42 Democrat places where it's dim, but it's not a crisis. Well, now it's 70-30 and 3 times the size that it was. So people read these trends and then they get freaked out. Likewise, look at the trend lines in Florida. People may not express it the same way as I do, where I can go say R plus this much, but they know instinctively just by going down there and seeing the vibes and seeing all the maganists down there. They know that Florida's safe, even if they don't know the numbers behind it. So the trend is what helps me understand where to divert my attention to. Or when I look at these maps and you're trying to tell me, like I've got Steve Daines running for the Senate in Montana. Now he dropped out, but he was a couple months ago. I was very frustrated because I have this narrow view of how the Republicans keep the House majority or the Senate majority. And I've got Steve Daines from Solid Red, Montana, sending out emails. Now he's not sending them, his staffers are. And they're begging and begging and begging for you to rush me $100, rush me $500. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, is Steve Daines' seat in Montana? And the tagline was, if we lose Montana, we lose the Senate. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, it's like, if we lost the Republican Senate seat in Montana, like, let's just not even contest the 2026 midterms and just get the powder dry for 2028, because in the trend lines, there's no blue Montana this year. All right. If there was a blue Montana, the Dems would have a lot of money there. They would have done a lot better than run these no names for the Democrat Senate seat there. So the proof is in the pudding. And that's what my models are supposed to detect. Just what is reality based on it's the 26 midterms and what all the trends are.
Wow.
Tells me where to look.
That's really impressive, Seth. Of course, I'm impressed every time I talk to you. Go ahead, Andrea. What were you going to say?
Seth has a beautiful brain. And I just want to say, because Seth's been a good friend of mine for a long time, that beyond like just being able to track these numbers statistically and, be able to educate us like this. I mean, he does do consulting with politicians. People should obviously connect with him, Real S. Keshel on all the handles. And then he just published this book. And I just want to say, being a homeschool mom, and Charity, you're a homeschool mom too, he's an amazing historian. And again, like he says, we learn from history. Everyone has to grab a copy of The American War on Election Corruption. It's on Amazon. And where are we tracking right now, Seth, with the stats on Amazon? You're best selling in what categories?
Well, so I reached #1 bestseller in 3 categories: elections
Nice.
and political process, and 21st century world history. Now, those numbers are like boxing titles, they don't last forever. But I've sold more than 8,000 copies in print, ebook, and audio since the book released about 7 weeks ago. And it continues to sell in big bulk orders where people want me to come to events. This is obviously the paperback copy in front of me. We have people that are sponsoring copies to give to the members of their state legislature or county commission boards, elections committees. So it's been a popular book. President Trump just pushed me out there again on Saturday. with some statistics I told to Newt Gingrich. Now, it wasn't an endorsement of the book. I'm still waiting on that. But the book has done well. The reviews are overwhelmingly positive, and I'm glad I wrote it. You know, it was a very interesting journey. Taught me a lot about myself, and it was a story that needed to be told more than just tedious numbers and trends. There was a lot of things in there about what it costs you to get involved. And this is the thing that keeps a lot of people away, Charity, from doing this kind of stuff is you were one Trump retweet or news release away from having your life radically change. Because I remember when I waded into this stuff and I had a big following, but it was like something I could still pull back out of. And then like President Trump was like, well, congratulations, here's the Seth Keshel guy. And it's been practically impossible for me to even think about returning to the normal 9 to 5 world.
Right. Well, we appreciate everything you do. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Seth is a brilliant speaker as well. So I encourage everyone, I mean, not just in the GOP space, but if you can get Seth to your community to talk about any issue at all. The last time Seth came to my community to speak to our GOP, I had an overwhelming amount of people reach out to me and say that was the best speech I've ever heard about American history, where we're at, where we're going, things like that. And that's what I wanted to ask Seth next, if you don't mind, Charity. But last night, again, Tom was speaking with Tim Pool, which is always a fun thing to watch the Tim Pool show. It's interesting. I want to strangle him and then other times hug him. And that's probably why he's Tim Pool. But they were talking about the future. You know, we see all the crazy stuff going on with Iran. You talk about the black pilling and kind of the harm that's being done by the Candace Owens of the world. And then some of, Trump's, stuff that he's putting out there is really turning some of the MAGA base against each other, Maha versus MAGA, and all this BS. It's like, you can tell that this was, if he's playing 5G chess, we know the enemy is also doing it. And they're doing all these kind of ways to infiltrate the movement. Where are we going next? Because everyone's like, Trump is so confident. He seems so confident. And the rest of us are sitting back going, we're not confident. We're really scared. I mean, you just talked about the 25% and whatnot, but what do you think Trump's going to do going into the next election to save us?
Well, I don't know.
Fight what we're seeing.
See, I think that we have a misplaced hope in what it is going to be to save our country. And if you really want to dig deeper into that, it's probably a God nudge, because the putting your hope in man, even President Trump, is idolatry. Right. So we have our engagement in the political system that we should take part in. But I've never had my hopes that one man is going to save our country. Right. So likewise, one party isn't going to save the country. Now, I will never vote Democrat. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. I am a registered Republican, and it's something that I want the party to. We don't have a change in the Republican Party that we want, because the people that espouse certain values and positions don't represent a big enough share of the party leadership to make that reality. The people that get pushed into offices are the ones with the big lobbyist funds behind them and the big corporate donors that mean they're going to be able to bend these folks to their will. That's just a fact. And when you get somebody like my wife Rachel, who's a real grassroots candidate who got elected twice, is running for re-election this year, we don't have a big war chest. She's very selective about who she takes money from. Very rarely will she take a donation from an organization, and only when she knows that there's no strings attached to the donation. So that's a big issue. But as far as what is Trump going to do, I'm confident that Trump is going to, try to identify the races that can be won to make a majority and campaign with these folks. But it's a double-edged sword, because there's some districts in Virginia. Trump lost Virginia by 6. Well, the Republican delegation for Congress only lost by 4 points about all 11 races in the Virginia U.S. House races. So Virginia, the normal Republican, runs a couple points ahead of Trump. And then there's other places where it's Trump or bust. If you don't have a Trumpy candidate, like in Michigan or Pennsylvania, you ain't going to win. And that's why we have trouble with these guys like Mike Rogers in Michigan, where he's wanting to woo the Republican establishment. But you're not going to win without the big ugly Trump vote from the middle of nowhere that came out from the factory to vote for a Republican slate down ballot. So there's a big disparity, and we fail because we don't understand down to the county level how people are and how people vote. We think that everyone agrees with us. We have a very toxic political environment out there online. I think that people that stick to the highs and lows are the ones that are the most constantly disappointed and upset. But politics goes like this. It's up and down, and it's up and down, and it's up and down. And then, of course, we have the weight of corrupt processes in the courts and in the elections that make it even worse. But, Trump is probably going to do in his instincts. He's got a number of things where he's historically better than anyone who's ever existed as far as instincts go. And then there's other things where he's not. And that's the reality. Every historical leader has those issues. But I'm confident that people will wake up to the point, or they will understand. I mean, with elections, more than 60% of Americans don't trust elections. That's why this is such a ripe cherry to pluck, where the SAVE Act has 80% support from the American people, and other opinions are changing. A lot of opinions are changing right now about foreign policy, who we align ourselves with. But that takes place. So,
your sound is breaking up, Seth.
Yeah, I think my phone's probably melting down.
Can you hear him, Charity?
No, it's breaking up pretty bad.
Yeah. Seth, I don't know if you want to try to hop on or back on. Yeah.
30 minutes. And then
I don't know if it's your mic.
All right, how's that?
Can't hear you.
No.
Do you want to hop off and back on, or do you want to say goodbye?
We need to be
we can't hear you. You look great, though. You look great. I love that shirt. Okay, so
all right. Well, this is great. We got to have Captain Seth Keshel. It's been a while since I've seen him.
It's always like an encyclopedia with him. So again, he's been a good friend of mine. It's like talking to him about history, even beyond just elections. I always say he's got a beautiful brain. The type of historical information that's in his mind, he could write history books all day long. Anyway, I really want everyone to get the book and get involved with what he does. But like you being the chair of Oklahoma, you can see how I've constantly been just praying that Seth could consult with almost just pretty much anyone running for office. And the GOP needs to be consulting with Seth. Like you need to get involved with Seth. You need to talk to him. And it's not just about what's going on in my precincts and what's going on in my area as far as, because he'll help you map out. But like the way he breaks down, and again, this is what the enemy does, I think, a lot better than us. Like when we're talking about saving the Republican Party and getting back to principles and saving our country, you do have to look at the statistics like Seth Keshel does, and you have to know where do we need to put our effort into the fight, and then how do we need to run to win. He will tell you like literally which voters to call, where to knock on doors, how to clean up your voter rolls, how to save your community. And again, like we say, that's where it all starts. But it drives me nuts because I hate seeing the GOP so ineffective and fighting with one another, and not, instead of advancing against the enemy, we stop and we look at each other and we fight. And then we put bad candidates in place, or like you said, we don't vet our candidates, or the enemy will put in fake candidates that then muddle it, and we can never get the good guys in. We can never get the good guys in because we're not understanding the numbers like he does.
Part of the reason it is the numbers, part of the reason with the GOP that we have so much infighting is because it's the mindset, right? Democrats believe in big government. They believe in staying in line. They're the ones that don't mind, standing in line and doing what you're told. Republicans believe in small government and individual liberty. And so because of that, we're all critical free thinkers. And it's natural that we're going to fight with each other. But what we have to do is remember that we're in a war and the enemy is more important. It doesn't matter the little issues that we make it about. The big picture, and I'm constantly saying that everywhere I go, the fight, the war is so much bigger than the small little battles we get caught up on. It's not important. And we don't get the luxury of deciding whether or not we like the person next to us. If somebody is in the foxhole fighting with you, you have to fight alongside them. It doesn't matter if you like them. It doesn't matter if you agree on something small. You're fighting something much bigger than that, and you're on the same page on that. And so that's what we have to focus on. So we're asking conservatives out there to be bigger than the issues. And you don't have to agree on everything, but the things you do agree on, let's find those and let's fight back together, because we're in a war and we will lose it if we don't come together and fight back. And I'm a little more optimistic, even though I see a lot of the stuff, I'm always trying to defend Trump, and then he puts out a picture and I'm like, geez, you're killing me, And then,
but he's like Seth said, he's one person and he's not the movement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's not what he meant. And it's, once again, he's not a pastor. We're not asking you to spiritually follow him. He's the president and he's done some great stuff. And your option was Kamala Harris. So let's remember what the issue is, remember what and fight back. he's doing better than we would have wanted. Even if you hate Trump, you don't have Kamala. So let's be thankful and move on and keep fighting, because it's more important that we fight together than if we keep fighting with each other.
Well, and I'm optimistic. Yeah, I mean, Seth and I talk. He doesn't like the black pilling, and Tim Pool talked about that last night with the Candace Owens and the Erica Kirk stuff. And then we saw a poor turnout, and we see what's happening with Turning Point is just heartbreaking, because no matter what you think about Erica or Candace or, all these feuds that are going on within, the Tucker and the Alex Jones and Trump, no matter what you think about that, Turning Point did amazing things. Like they talked about last night, Turning Point did amazing things for our party, and absolutely helped us secure victories that we would not have had otherwise. So I don't like seeing that organization get kind of destroyed with this kind of like what Seth said about don't get wrapped up into the nonsense that you see on social media is so true. It's so true. At the end of the day, when you're in your home with your family sitting around and you're like, I'm pro Second Amendment. I want the government to be as small and limited as possible. When you look at your values and you're saying, I'm not a communist, I'm not a socialist, I'm happy that Kamala's not in office. Like, again, we always say that there's the uniparty issue we have. I'm very upset that the Republican Party is not more effective. We should be much more effective. Congress shouldn't be as awful as they are. So I do want Republicans to, like you said from the video, to like be you. I want more charities. Stand for what the party principles are, what our platform is. We have a platform. And when you vote 90% against the platform, you're not a Republican. So yes, as a Republican, I'm a Republican for the ideal of what the Republican Party should be. I might be upset over how many rhinos are in, but I'm going to continue to vote Republican. I'm going to continue to show up on election day, because as an American, if I want to live in a republic, I have to vote. So I'm optimistic that even though we see these infighting things that seem to be hurting the party and people are getting disgruntled with Trump, Trump is not the ideal. He's a person. Freedom that our founding fathers built is what we vote for. And if you don't vote, you're going to live in a socialist, communist regime and lose everything. You have to go out and vote. I'm kind of optimistic. People are saying, Andrew, what do you think about the slow turnout and all these things that are happening and these disgruntled people? They're not going to show up. They're not going to show up. I don't know. I'm thinking we're still only, 5 years, 6 years off of the COVID pandemic. They slapped masks on us. You and I, we've bled for this movement. I'm not backing down. I'm not going to not vote. I might not go to an event from time to time. I might not want to get involved with the drama. I might not comment on every little thing. I haven't talked about the Erica Kirk stuff, and I don't cover certain things because I'm staying, like I said, focused on the mission and the real enemy. I'm not going to get sidelined by all this BS. Okay. I'm still fighting for my family and my country. So even though people don't maybe show up for some of those events, I don't think that means they're not going to show up to vote. We have to keep optimism going. We have to stay optimistic and say, listen, we can still win this. Like what Seth just said was one of the most optimistic things I've heard in a long time. He talked about the numbers and how we can still save the Senate and save some of these states that have been purple. We can bring them back to life. And it is a numbers game. It's not that every state goes red, and it's not that we fix every problem everywhere. We've got to worry about Georgia and things like that. But if everyone who's MAGA and still proud to be MAGA, regardless of who's president, goes out and votes, we have a good shot at still saving our country and going in the right direction.
That's right. Alex Jones, which we love Alex Jones. I woke up in 2001 because of him. Alex Jones did this interview last week with Roger Stone, and they actually come to the same conclusion that you just did, where we're talking about what's the bigger picture and how important it is. And you're exactly right. That's why we have the brigades, guys. You got to take back your community. What's going on at the federal level, I don't even know that we can save a lot of that. I really don't. I still hold that I think it might be a lost cause. I'm still willing to fight for it. But I definitely am focusing my energy at this local level, at the state level, because I think that's how we win it. We are not going to take back the country until we take back our community. You take back your community, and then you take back your state, and then we take back the country. And maybe we just end up with these sovereign states where we have pockets of, you decide what state you want to go to. I'm not sure how this all ends, but I know that where I'm living, it's going to be conservative. And so how do you take back your community? That's why we have the brigades. Join Freedom Brigades. Go to freedombrigades.com, sign up. We will help you. We'll get you a plan and help you take back your community. But go to Amazon. Are you going to drop it in the link
I didn't put up the link because you can just share. I'll put it back up.
I
on
will
the screen,
do it
though,
on
the copy. Yeah, on your platform.
American
but it's
War,
the American War. Yep.
I will have a link on the Substack. Follow me on Substack if you want these podcasts emailed to you every time we do one. Follow us on X. Follow us on Facebook. You guys, we've got to take back the country, and it's not because we're sitting around waiting on Trump. He is not a savior. It's up to us. So you guys, thank you. Andrea, thank you. We will see you guys next week.
God bless. See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you.